Good afternoon, everyone. Arachnophobia. Those are all poisonous spiders swarming on people's homes after floods. The Wormnado. Worms in a circle after a flood. Snow in Hawaii. Mauna Kea. Earliest cherry blossom in Japan in 1,200 years. The red dots here anywhere are circled. The black bar are the earliest on record. Match that up with the grand solar minimums all the way to the 800 AD era, and they match. Cherry blossoms signal the onset of the grand solar minimum. The Biden administration and Democrats in Congress are wasting no time in their efforts to reset the direction of America's future. The Wall Street Journal estimates that of the $1.7 trillion stimulus bill, only $825 billion was directly related to COVID, and it's estimated that 2021 will include another $3 trillion in stimulus money printing, bringing the total to $6.3 trillion in 2020 and 2021 alone. And that's why you'll instantly understand when Wells Fargo and Goldman Sachs both say it's the time to buy gold. It's time to heed that advice. Patriot Gold Group has the no-fee-for-life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no-fee-for-life IRA. So go ahead and give the folks at Patriot Gold Group a call to discuss physical gold and silver. And the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 5 years in a row from 2016 until present. Click the link in the description box below for more information. And now on with the video. And not being a fan of spiders myself, I'm always fascinated by these articles here. But this might give you a little bit of the heebie-jeebies. New South Wales, they had some of the heaviest rainfall ever experienced, and since these funnel web poisonous spiders are ground dwellers actually beneath the ground when it floods, they come up, they're flooded out of their homes. And I thought, okay, that's quite a few there, huh? I wonder where they are in the countryside, but then widening that out, the entire ground is moving, literally as in some kind of Hollywood-esque movie, but you remember, those are poisonous spiders, funnel webs. And I thought, well, you know, I'm super happy I'm not on a boat, because if you had been going by even on a canoe or something, they would have grabbed onto the side of your vessel and started crawling in. You might have had to jump out to get away from those things. But then they started crawling on the homes and entering homes everywhere. That's the same amount of those poisonous funnel web spiders going up into houses. Can you imagine how terrifying that would be? For those of us in the U.S., we have to think about if these were all black widow spiders crawling into your house. Now, if you're still with me after that first segment, let's talk about worms. They call it a Wormnado. This is in Hoboken, New Jersey. A flood in the park as well, and these worms emerged after almost record floods, but they spread across the sidewalk and started to make this circular formation. You know, usually they'll bunch together, they're straight, and maybe a new way to now study them when they're forced out in a mass flood on how they survive, because fire ants do the same thing. When they're in a flood, they bond together like a raft, and then they float through, and after they escape the floodwaters, they disconnect themselves. But as they were forming into this Wormnado, you can see how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them came out of the ground, and then they started making that circular shape. Maybe they're trying to make themselves look larger for a predator from the sky, hawks, eagle, whatever it might be, birds. Not sure. But they see some similar phenomenon in massive floods of just earthworms grouping together, but nothing like the Wormnado where they take on that circular formation. Other strange events happening in these days. Hawaii, warm, sunny, tropical rainbows. Interrupted by another 1.5 inches of snow, Mauna Kea. This is incredibly late for snow, the 29th of March. But then if we jump back to January 29th, they had record snowfall of almost 2 feet. They call it pineapple powder. But the Mauna Kea Ice Age Natural Area Reserve, quite fitting with this landscape and icy views. And heading even more west across the Pacific, Japan's early cherry blossom. At first I thought it said 1812, and then I read deeper into the article, and they really mean 812 AD. Interesting collapse of the Tang Dynasty in that era. But if you wouldn't have seen that and you would have skipped over the date, the way it says, well, it's the earliest that the flowers had begun to emerge on record. The earliest in 1,200 years. And this goes right along with this grand solar minimum research saying that we are well above a 400-year periodicity on this grand solar minimum intensity. It's going to be well into the 1,200, 2,000, or 3,600 year intensity. Talk about a great reset. This is it from nature. Governments piggybacking on top of the natural cycles. From the BBC, the previous earliest record beyond that, there was one in the 1950s, and then in 1409. And this one then takes the top earliest in the record books back to 812 AD. Included in the article, Osaka Prefecture University, thanks for putting this out. And each area that you see a red dot was the date of emergence. Now, the article's claiming that it's climate change doing this, but I look at that black circle that I included in there and say, wait a second. If it's truly the first time because of warming temperatures, then we should not see incredibly early emergence at, let's say, 1000 AD, 1200 AD, 1400 AD, 1600, right in the middle of the Maunder minimum, and then now again. And I thought, I already understand these dates. These are grand solar minimum onset dates. So let's put this with the solar activity, dated carbon-14. This is our 2010 peer-reviewed study. The Oort minimum, these are all grand solar minimums. The Wolf minimum, Sporter minimum, Maunder minimum. And we're heading into another grand solar minimum, which will affect global food production, economy, and population migration. So we're seeing a lot of governments across the planet structuring, getting ready for these changes. So I thought I'd overlap these for you to show you exactly what I am talking about. And I tried to match these up the best I could, but as we get toward the year 2000, I couldn't really scrunch the chart to make it fit directly over the line. But all the way up to around, say, 1600, we're looking pretty good there. The latest dates match up with the onset dates of grand solar minimums of the past. If we go to the 1600s, what do you see on the bottom chart? I see the Maunder minimum. If we go more into the 1400 eras on the above chart for the cherry blossom early emergence date, what do we get there? Sporter minimum. 1300s Wolf minimum. And if we go right back into, say, around 950, coming into the era 1000, just to the descent of the Oort minimum, what do we see? Early emergence again of the cherry blossoms. You can see the pattern above. You can see it below. It's signaling something has changed. Nobody wants to talk about the magnetic poles and their strange wander. Swarm picking up the South Atlantic anomaly. We got an enormous amount of electromagnetic effects happening across the solar system. Uranus apparently just flared off, which would be another signal that that magnetic Taurus wave is inbound towards Saturn, then Jupiter, then Mars, then Earth coming up in 2023 and 4. Why does nobody want to talk about magnetism and stepping down of the sun's magnetic field that's now affecting our magnetic field and all planets in our solar system? Right on clockwork, matching up. Nature is showing us in advance probably 2 years of what's about to happen on the ground here. We humans rarely take notice. Geomagnetic pole shift is interesting on a 12,000-year cycle. Seems to be a cyclical event here. 72,000 years, 60,000, 45,000, 36,000, 24,000, 12, and now. So you just have to wonder what's going on and why all institutions across the planet want to change this instant. 2019, everything was locked in stone, and then suddenly everything's changed in a couple of years, just now magically, and all this is happening. I think they're related. That's what the video's about. I hope you do your own research. Everything's linked in the description box below so you can chase down all the graphs, images, and information for tonight so you can try to add to the discussion. But as we move forward, you're going to have to think about food. It's going to get incredibly expensive. Long-term storable foods are the best way to go. My Patriot Supply and Adapt 2030, 2-week or the 4-week emergency food supply. My Patriot Supply also has 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, 1 year packages. And like I have done, if you buy those 50-pound bags of rice, you're going to want to put those in something smaller to store for a longer period of time. My Patriot Supply also offers the Mylar bags and the oxygen packs, so you can bring that down into, say, 5-pound, 10-pound bags. That My Patriot Supply link is in the description box below. It's a great way to support the channel so I can continue to bring you research just like this. I do thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.